Model building is a hobby that should bring pleasure and a sense of calm. But why is it so often that we simply can't get to it? Why do we want to sit down and build and end up postponing it again and again? In this video, I will talk about 10 main enemies of scale modeling, the things that prevent us from enjoying our favorite hobby. This list is subjective and based on my own experience. I'm sure you have your own enemies of modeling, so feel free to share them in the comments. It will be interesting to read. In the background, while we talk, I'll be restoring an old, poorly assembled model. So let's get started. Enemy number one, work. For most adults, work is probably the main enemy of any hobby. Not because it's bad, but because it takes away both time and energy. You come home in the evening, look at your modeling desk, and realize that the only thing you're really capable of right now is opening YouTube and falling asleep to a random video. But interestingly, having no job isn't much better. You suddenly have plenty of free time, but no money for new kits, paint, or tools, so modeling still loses. In my case, my job is YouTube. I run 2 channels, and it's a constant process. Scripts, editing, research, archives. From the outside, it looks like a dream. Working from home, being your own boss. But in reality, modeling is often postponed for later, for the weekend, for next month, for when things calm down. And then 1 month passes, then another, and one day you find a half-built kit in a box and think, did I start this in this life? Or the previous one? Of course, work is necessary. It pays the bills and allows us to buy new models. But honestly, it's usually the main thing that stops us from sitting down, turning on the lamp, and building something just for ourselves. Enemy number 2, YouTube, TikTok, and social media. I already mentioned this briefly in the first part, and not by accident, because this is probably one of the most cunning enemies of scale modeling. You can have a free evening. You can be in the right mood. You can want to build something. You can even sit down at your desk and lay out your tools. And at that moment, you think, okay, I'll just check TikTok for 5 minutes, and then I'll start. 5 minutes. And then suddenly you realize that 2 hours have passed. You're still holding your phone. You've watched dozens of random videos, and there's no time left for modeling. The most dangerous thing about this enemy is that it doesn't look dangerous at all. It feels like rest, like relaxing, like a short break. But in reality, it quietly eats up your entire evening. From my experience, this is one of the hardest enemies to fight because you don't feel tired. You don't notice how distracted you are. You just lose time. And then at some point you catch yourself thinking, I plan to build a model today, and I didn't even open the box. Enemy number 3, lack of inspiration. This one is more personal, and I'm not sure if everyone struggles with it the same way I do, but for me, it's a real problem. The thing is, almost all of my models, with very few exceptions, are built with bases, vignettes, or full dioramas. It's my personal belief, and I'm not trying to convince anyone, that a model without a base or a story feels unfinished. And this is where the problems often begin. Sometimes the model is already built and painted. Everything is done. And then I get stuck. I sit there and realize that I don't know what environment to place it in, what scene to create, what story to tell with this diorama. And in this state, a project can sit on the shelf for months. For example, right now I'm working on a Gaz 69 kit from Bronco. At first, I wanted to build it as an Arab insurgent vehicle, and I even bought some figures. Then I changed my mind. It didn't really fit that theme. The kit came with Chinese license plate decals, so I decided to make a Chinese version instead. But I still haven't figured out the story. So the model is almost finished, but mentally, I'm stuck. Sometimes this turns into a real creative block. And for me personally, this is one of the most serious enemies of modeling. Enemy number 4, poor working conditions. When you don't have your own proper workspace, scale modeling becomes much harder than it should be. You have to share your desk, with your kids doing their homework, or with your wife working on her laptop or doing her nails. It may sound like a small thing, but in reality, it's a constant compromise. You have to clear everything away, then set it all up again, then pack it away once more. On top of that, there's often poor lighting, no proper shelves or storage for tools, and not enough space to keep finished models. In the end, you spend more time organizing your workspace than actually building. Fortunately, I managed to defeat this enemy. I built myself a proper workspace on the balcony. But I still remember those uncomfortable, almost unbearable conditions from the past. And when I think about how I used to build models practically on my knees, it makes me uncomfortable even now. Because without a decent workspace, even your favorite hobby turns into a constant struggle. Enemy number 5, the so-called carpet monster. Back when I didn't have my own workspace and built models at a shared table in my room, there was always a carpet under my feet. And only God knows how many small parts it has taken with it forever. On the one hand, you can laugh about it. The carpet monster is almost a legend among modelers. But on the other hand, it's not funny at all when you lose a really important, unique, irreplaceable part, especially when there's no spare and no easy replacement. By the way, in my new workspace, I deliberately made the floor carpet-free. Yes, it's a bit colder for my feet, but so far I haven't lost a single part. And honestly, it's one of the best comfort upgrades I've ever made. Enemy number 6, dust. Sometimes it feels like it's everywhere. No matter how much you clean your workspace or wipe down the surfaces, sooner or later it always finds its way into your paint or clear coat. During building and painting, it's annoying, but not a disaster. Much worse are finished models that sit in display cabinets and slowly get covered in dust. Cleaning them is very difficult. The parts are fragile: antennas, handrails, photo etch. One wrong move and something can break. Completely isolating models from dust is almost impossible. Even inside closed display cases, it eventually appears. So in the end, you just have to accept this enemy. Clean your models regularly, be careful, and understand that perfect cleanliness and scale modeling is almost impossible. Enemy number 7, cats. Sometimes I think they are even more dangerous than dust. First of all, there's the fur. It's everywhere. No matter how much you clean, sooner or later your model gets covered in a thin layer of cat camouflage. Second, their personality. My cat, for example, is quite energetic. From time to time, he gets sudden bursts of energy and starts running around the apartment at full speed, jumping on sofas, tables, and anything else in his way. Fortunately, my models haven't suffered yet, but he has already managed to destroy one of my tool racks. From the outside, it looks like a meme situation. Funny, chaotic, cute. But in practice, it means one thing. You can't leave a model on the table even for half an hour, because in that time it will either be covered in fur or end up on the floor. So for cat owners, scale modeling is also a constant survival game. Enemy number 8, background content. This may sound strange, but for me, it's a real problem. While building models, some people listen to music. Some watch TV shows. I prefer documentaries, mostly about history, wars, and disasters. And over time, I started feeling like I had already watched everything that really interested me. Everything on YouTube and other platforms that was worth my attention. So before I even start modeling, I can spend 15 minutes, sometimes even longer, just trying to decide what to put on in the background. Scrolling, searching, scrolling again. And suddenly, half an hour is gone. Sometimes I even catch myself thinking that I don't feel like building tonight simply because I have nothing good to watch. It sounds strange, but it's true. And sometimes it's the opposite. When a new, good documentary comes out, it becomes a perfect excuse to make time for modeling. I turn it on and get to work. Enemy number 9 is when there's simply no time left. This includes all the everyday routine, household chores, shopping, cleaning, and all those small, urgent tasks that appear out of nowhere. Add to that time with family, helping relatives, regular responsibilities at home. And suddenly, the weekend, which was supposed to be your time, turns into a second work schedule. You wake up in the morning thinking, today I'll definitely work on a model. And in the evening, you suddenly realize the day is over, and you never made it to your desk. And nothing dramatic even happened. Just one thing, then another, then a third, and all your time is gone. As a result, modeling is constantly postponed. To next weekend, to vacation, to when things calm down. And the last enemy on this list is laziness. Not in the sense that you don't want to build at all. You do want to. You're interested. You have ideas. You're just tired, because sitting down to build is not just sitting down. It means taking all your tools out of drawers and cabinets, setting everything up on the desk, preparing your workspace. and then after a long day, putting it all back again. At some point, you think, yes, I want to build, just not today, and the evening is gone. Sometimes it's a bit different. A project gets stuck at a stage you simply don't like. For me, that stage is painting. Honestly, I don't like it at all. And when it's time to paint, I can postpone it for a very long time. A week, 2 weeks, sometimes even longer. The model just sits there, waiting. And every time you find another excuse why today is not the right day. I don't know if it's just me, but I suspect many of you will recognize yourselves here. So, this was my personal list of the enemies of scale modeling. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have your own enemies, feel free to share them in the comments. I think many people will find it interesting. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.